When Mourinho arrived at United in 2016, he was so confused as to why the fans kept singing Diego, Diego, Diego that he literally had to ask his staff who it was. The man was Diego Forlan. The way they were singing, you would think he was a legend at the club, but in reality, his time at United was awful. But some footballers just have that X factor. For some reason, the fans loved them no matter what, which is especially ironic given that Forlan didn't even like football growing up. He was inches away from never touching a football, and after his catastrophic time with United, he could have easily been forgotten, but he pushed through, and it was only at the age of 30 that he fully recovered from his time there, and surprisingly, he blew up, taking award after award and becoming a cult hero like there have only been a few. This was easily one of the most requested videos in the history of the channel. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. The start of Forlan's life was as odd as it gets. His father, his uncle, and even his grandpa were all footballers, and they were no amateurs. They were full-blown Uruguayan internationals, and both his father and his grandpa managed to win the Copa America. Forlan was born to be a footballer, but to the distaste of everyone, he preferred tennis. His family tried everything. On his birthday, his dad even gifted him a shirt Pelé had given him after a match, but all Forlan did was that he nearly ripped it trying to get it on, which meant he never saw it again. For all they knew, there was nothing that could take Forlan out of the tennis court, but then a tragedy changed everything. His older sister was returning from a party when her car spun off and hit a palm tree. Her boyfriend died on the scene, and she was left completely paralyzed, stuck in intensive care for 5 months. Despite all the football royalty in the family, Uruguayan football wasn't exactly paying a fortune in the 60s, so once the medical bills began piling up, they began crying out for help. They were $250,000 in debt when an old friend of his dad donated some of the money and helped raise the rest. His name was Diego Maradona. Seeing money talk like that changed Forlan. As his sister has told, the first thing he said after all of that was, "I'm gonna become a world-famous footballer and make enough money to get you all the best doctors in the world." And though he clearly wasn't lying, being already 12, he had some serious catching up to do, which might explain why he would become such a late bloomer. Despite the circumstances, hearing that he wanted to follow football was music to everyone's ears, and so they moved mountains trying to make it all easier for him, and after 4 years playing at Danubio, now 16 years old, they got him a trial at Nancy in France, which he clearly didn't deserve at that point, meaning it went horribly wrong, and after a few months he was already being sent back. Still, he didn't let the fact that he had just blown his head start put him down. He left Uruguay once again and joined Independiene's academy in Argentina, the same team his grandpa had played for more than half a century before him, and this time around, it all went well. At 18, he got his first match for the main team. At 19, he started putting some numbers on the board, and at 20, fittingly enough, he was already scoring 20 goals a season, despite Independiente going through such a rough patch that he finished 2 points off of the bottom of the table at one point. Regardless, not only was Forlan their top scorer by a mile, he was putting on man-of-the-match performances week in, week out. He was more than a goal scorer. Some didn't even see him as a striker at all. He was something else, one of the first prototypes of the modern striker. And after starting his season with a hat-trick against Vélez Sarsfield and 10 more goals in the next 3 months, they say it was Maradona who alerted his contacts in Europe, and once again, the cards were on the table. And though for long it seemed Middlesbrough would be the one to be dealt, they would be paying the 11 million euros of his transfer fee in installments, which allowed Sir Alex Ferguson to swoop in with a money bag, offering to pay that same amount immediately. And in a blink of an eye, Forlan was no longer a Diablo Rojo, he was now a Red Devil, but maybe they should have kept in mind that he was still only 22 and had played less than 100 matches so far, because things didn't go well. Not well at all. Forlan seemed far too eager to make it. He wasn't just giving it his all, he was giving it far too much, charging down the pitch in the most chaotic of fashions. Every pass seemed to go astray, every shot was a disaster. It almost seemed supernatural. and he quickly became the Premier League's laughingstock. But by the next season, after 26 matches without a single goal and 9 months of jokes, people hissed off. Everyone could see how hard he was trying. Solskjaer even said he had never seen anyone train so hard, and the fans felt for him. They all wanted him to score. After all, it clearly wasn't just his fault. Throughout those 9 months, he was afforded 30 minutes of game time, only 7 times. At the end of the day, United were stacked. Solskjaer was still banging in goals, Van Nistelrooy was at the peak of his powers, and while Forlan preferred to play with a partner, Van Nistelrooy was never going to share the limelight with him. That just wasn't his style. However, David Beckham did not have a problem with that, and on a fateful night playing against Maccabi Haifa, he gifted Forlan with a chance to take a penalty. The whole stadium gasped for a second. If he somehow missed even this, surely he had to be under a curse. Commentator Peter Drury put it better than anyone else. Please, anyone with an ounce of humanity, say please on his behalf. And then he scored. The man English media referred to as Diego Forlan finally had a reason to smile, but still, 7 more appearances went by without a goal, and only then did he finally manage to experience a period of relative good form, scoring in 2 consecutive Premier League matches with a game winner in the 85th minute, changing football forever. Forlan, completely euphoric, took off his shirt celebrating and then struggled so much with putting it back on. Though, quick side note, Nike's jerseys had some undershirt technology gimmick that year that made it pretty hard to put them on. Regardless, as I was saying, the game was restarted and Forlan ended up iconically running around the pitch with his shirt off, even slight tackling an opponent before someone from the bench helped him out with his whole thing. But what makes this even more hilarious and historical, as I said before, is that many believe this was the moment that led FIFA to finally ban players from taking off their shirts, which every single fan wishes they hadn't done, but it is what it is. Regardless, things kept improving for a while. 2 matches later came 2 assists versus Newcastle, and right after that, Forlan's best ever performance in a United shirt, scoring twice in a 2-1 win over Liverpool, taking advantage of a massive error by Dudek, and then scoring the winner with a thunderbolt. The shirt came off for the 4th time, and suddenly the fans were singing his name. Could it be that Forlan had overcome his struggles? Well, he did score 4 in the next 9, including a 90th minute winner against Chelsea, despite still not getting many minutes, which meant he was averaging 1 goal or assist every 96 minutes since this period of good form started. But despite this, then it just happened all over again. 9 months without scoring, all the way into the following season, even getting the worst miss of his career against Juventus, before randomly getting 7 goals in 9 matches and then disappearing again. Could this all be any more frustrating? Well, it certainly became more frustrating for Forlan, who in his final appearance for United failed to follow Sir Alex's advice to change his studs before coming in, and ended up slipping and missing the chance that could have given United the draw. So, with Sir Alex furious and an 18-year-old Rooney coming in, Forlan took the axe and was cut from the squad. In the end, he was sold to the highest bidder. First, it seemed he could be going to Bilbao, who despite their Basque players only rule, could take in Forlan as his grandma was actually from there, but then he ended up joining Villareal instead for just 3.2 million euros, 4 times less than United had paid for him. With such a disappointing fee next to his name, moving to a city with a population smaller than Old Trafford's capacity, no one could have guessed that now 26-year-old Forlan would become one of the greatest late bloomers the game has ever seen. Joining forces with the talented Juan Román Riquelme, the South American duo took a Villareal team that had been promoted only 4 years earlier and brought them to a whole new level. It was like watching Rocky Balboa go up the steps and put his fist in the air. This was his redemption plot. Still, it wasn't immediate. By December, he had only scored 4 goals, Villareal were 14th, and there was reason to worry. Just imagine, Samuel Eto'o was already at the top of the goal scorers table, virtually unreachable with 12 goals. Forlan even began getting dropped to the bench, but then 13 goals in 15 matches, he had once again popped off midway through the season, and Eto'o was suddenly only 3 goals in front. But would Forlan disappear again? Not this time, as Villareal needed him the most. He finished the season with 5 goals in his last 2 matches, including a hat-trick at the Camp Nou, to tie the match to 3 goals after having already gotten a brace against them in January, beating all the odds, taking over Samuel Eto'o, winning the league's top scorer award, taking Villareal to the Champions League, winning the European Golden Boot and being nominated to the Ballon d'Or. Forlan had completely changed the path of his career in a matter of months. When asked how he managed to do that, he answered, "In Spain, I get 90 minutes to play, then 5 days of rest, and we go again. In England, with 10 to 15 minutes a match and without the backing of the coach, how was I supposed to play?" Regardless, after a season where Villareal went through major changes, dropping to 7th place in the league with Forlan struggling to score, the next year he impressed once more, totaling 20 league goals again, which was made even more impressive by his late season heroics, with 13 goals in the last 12 matches of the season, taking Villareal to more wins over that 2-month span than they had managed all season, and getting them up to a 5th place finish and qualification to the UEFA Cup. Now back to his best. Once Fernando Torres left Atletico, the answer was obvious. Who better to partner with Kun Agüero than another matador from Indpendiente? And so, Forlan joined them for 21 million and once again completely changed the path of the club. At that point, it had been 7 years since Atletico had been promoted from the 2nd tier, and so far they had only managed to sneak into the top 10 twice, but then Forlan arrived and he fit in like a glove. 11 goals in 16 matches in the first few months, and by the end of the year, he had partnered with Agüero for a total of 55 goals, launching Atletico straight into the Champions League for only the 2nd time in 30 years, with Forlan's last goal of the season being the difference maker. Having a season like this at 30 years of age was already a surprise, but the next year, he blew every pre-established idea anyone had about him out of the water. At 31 years of age, he had by far his most prolific season ever, playing well from the get-go, but then completely overshadowing Agüero by the time February came around, first with 7 goals in 6 matches, scoring against both Real and Barcelona, and then finishing the season with 12 goals in 8 matches, being solely responsible for Atletico's Champions League qualification and doubling his goal tally from the previous year, now totaling an incredible 32 league goals and winning the European Golden Boot a 2nd time. Only 7 players had ever managed to do that in history back then, and nobody had ever done it in La Liga. Still, he lacked 2 things in his career: some titles, after all he had barely won anything since his United days where he barely contributed, and above all, he needed to achieve glory with Uruguay, which was even more mandatory considering his family's legacy, and believe it or not, despite his age, over the next 2 years he would get all of that. First came the titles with Atletico. Despite his goals tally dropping substantially, Forlan went on to dominate the Europa League, scoring a 90th minute winning goal against Galatasaray as well as a decisive away goal against Valencia before meeting his old nemesis Liverpool and scoring the only home goal as well as a winning goal away in extra time before doing that all over again in the finals, scoring the first goal but also the decisive 2nd in extra time, taking down Fulham and taking off his shirt for all time's sake. It was an unbelievable run, but it still wasn't even close to his best moment in 2010. Over summer, he would join Uruguay and he would once again dominate, taking advantage of the infamous Javolani and its crazy movements to score screamer after screamer and put up one of the all-time greatest World Cup performances. Despite having reached the age of 32 with only 1 World Cup goal, he started by scoring 2 in 3 group stage matches before assisting against South Korea and then going on a rampage, scoring their only goal in that famous match against Ghana, and then 1 more to tie the semi-final against the Netherlands, only to go down to the 3rd place match, scoring the goal of the tournament but still somehow going home without a medal. But at least he did get another kind of silverware, the award for best player in the tournament. After all, he had managed to finish tied for top goal scorer despite 4 of his 5 goals being either volleys, free kicks or scored from long range, and even more impressively, by the end of the year he earned a 5th place finish at the Ballon d'Or. But the craziest thing is that somehow he still wasn't done. Feels like I've said this a million times now. He is a late bloomer indeed, huh? Despite beating Inter to the European Super Cup, Forlan went on to have a horrible season, but as it seemed the years were catching up to him, even going 5 Copa America matches without a goal, he surprised everyone by scoring twice in the final, becoming Uruguay's all-time top scorer and getting himself the gold medal he had been fighting for. Finally, he could join his dad and grandpa as South American champions. And finally, it seemed Forlan allowed himself to slow down, now close to 34 years of age, being pushed out of Atletico with the arrival of Falcao after some tension had built up between him and the club, and joining Inter where he would not be the happiest of men, claiming he was being played out of position and leaving the club after only 2 goals in 22 matches. Then joining Internacional in Brazil, his father's former team, and being the top scorer as they won the Gaúcho Championship before moving 4 times in 5 years, playing in Japan, in his childhood team Peñarol, as well as India and Hong Kong, only announcing his retirement in 2019 at 41 years of age.